All right, so OWC Finals weekend came to an end. It's been a little over a day now since the matches finished up. The map pool showcase for Grand Finals came out. Got to look at what we're going to be seeing next weekend, and it's had me thinking about the weekend that we just saw, and so we're gonna talk about it a little bit because I think we got some great matches and we learned a lot about a couple of the teams. So, first off, right off the bat here, United States, Germany, match of the year, and it's not even particularly close. I mean, you really can't make a comparison to anything else. This match had everything. It had just the most ridiculous pop-off performances from some players, it had back and forth, it had drama, it had it all. You start out kind of going into this thinking, these are the two best teams in the tournament on paper. We haven't really seen them against stern opposition yet because really they're each other's competition. That's how it's kind of been discussed all year, and that's what we knew going in. I think it was pretty consensus that despite Germany ending up at the 3 seed instead of the 2 seed, they were the primary opposition that the United States was going to have if they were going to try to defend and win their 4th straight World Cup. And that's what we got. Both teams came into it with pretty comfortable wins in the previous round in the semis. 6-2 for both against Hong Kong and Canada, two teams that were just overmatched, quite frankly, against USA and Canada, or USA and Germany, excuse me. So they come into this really riding a pretty strong wave of a lot of momentum each. And knowing that this was the real match. The winner's bracket final was the first match for either of these teams that really meant anything, because there was no way either of them was going to lose to anybody except each other. So, you come in with the United States building a team this year that I think is a little bit stronger in terms of certain skill sets than last year. Same thing with Canada. USA came into this year with the goal of, I think, bringing in some new blood. They had Vaxe obviously not playing this year. They had Rectagon tournament banned this year. They had BTMC, who quite frankly wasn't good enough this year. He was barely good enough last year. Kablaze, who for all she's talked about quitting and stuff, obviously has been playing all year long and streams 8 hours a day, but didn't quite make the cut for World Cup. So you have a United States team that brings in Utami, who's the best player in tournaments for much of this year. You have Taquito, who has been on the upswing over the past several months. You have Arison, who of course everybody knows is one of the best speed players in the world and has shown it in tournaments and in solo play. And you have Digital Hypno coming back, who fills kind of a weird role for this team where it really doesn't feel like he's as important as he ends up being. He comes in to fill for things and is able to put up decent scores. I think there's other people who could probably do what he's doing and it wouldn't make a huge difference because he's just not playing all that many maps, but he's on the team and he's performing, and that's all that really ends up mattering. On the other side, Germany, they ran back a lot of their roster this year. They got to the Grand Finals, took United States with Vaxe to a Grand Finals tiebreaker. I think they realized that there were a couple of changes they needed to make. And the biggest one, of course, was Kriller this year coming in has been ridiculous. Kriller is playing so well. I'll get to this a little later on because I do want to discuss this as well, but if there was a Rookie of the Year award, Kriller would be on the short list for that 100%, no questions asked. The dude has been filling his niche really, really well, and he brings a lot to the table for Germany in terms of shoring up kind of their weakness last year of not being so great at the gimmicky maps and not being great at some of the hidden stuff, so on and so forth. Other than that, they brought back White Cat from last year, Dust Ice, obviously their long-running, kind of anchor and backbone, Hal Watcher Okanamo. They bring in Rising and KHZ and Umbre as well. It's a very strong mechanical team, and when you bring in Kriller and you see the improvement that we've seen from White Cat in terms of skill set expansion, it's a team that obviously everybody knew was going to be targeting the win for the first time. So a lot on the line here in this match, and it went not quite how I think people expected it. If I told you, if somebody had told me going into this match, there's going to be all 4 DTs left up and all 4 of them picked in the match, and the United States is going to win 3 of them, and that there are two of the three hiddens get left up. Of course, Germany banning out the low AR hidden, but leaving the other two, and then winning the other two, both as break points. I don't think anybody really expected that to be the way things went. It was a very surprising outcome on those picks. You had Arison coming in and doing his thing on DT2, DT3, and you had the USA kind of underperforming on those hiddens. You saw they got the break point here on DT1, and then they picked hidden 3 and lost it right back. Germany, got a little bit of momentum going, I thought. We knew they would be really good at precision after they stomped the USA on Hard Rock 2. I mean, this score is just not even close. And then they go ahead and pick Fremod to win it as well to tie the match up late on in things. Then, the United States, of course, goes back into DT on the one DT that was really kind of went their way, win it. And Germany was left with nothing really, I don't think, except for DT2 to pick at that point. And guess what? USA comes in, Arison FCs at Utami FCs at Fancy Lad, puts up almost 900k, exarch puts up 650k, Rising underperforms on it, and USA takes it right back. And then they pick the other hidden, just like last year, 2020 Grand Finals. Their last pick in that match was hidden 1. They lost it, they come back, they pick hidden 1, last pick again here in the finals this year, and they lose it again. I think it's a really interesting thing to think about, because I do think that these two teams will match up again in the Grand Final. More on that shortly, but it's going to be some thought process here for both these teams, because I do think they're both better at those skill sets than they displayed in this match. Germany doesn't expect to lose stamina DT picks, and USA doesn't expect to lose hiddens against the opposing team there, but that's what happened. And then of course you come into the tiebreaker after Germany just pulls through with White Cat and Halo Watcher on Hard Rock 1, which was always going to be a win for them. I'm surprised that took them as long as it did to pick that. Their mechanics are really, really good. Halo Watcher here, 1400s, and the one miss at the very beginning. And then they go to the tiebreaker, and of course we have the situation with Fancy Lad, where his power goes out, and he has a score of 236k, and that gets attributed, and USA wins by about 100k. He would have gotten a lot more score than that anyway, but really what we want to talk about here is Taquito. My goodness, 584k with hidden and almost 1900 combo. Dude showed up when it mattered, and that was very impressive. And I think that's the key takeaways from this match. White Cat is really, really good. I mean, look at this, the dude is insane. Playing amazing Osu. Fancy Lad Utami coming through. Arison showing why he's on this USA team this year. They finally put him on. He comes in here in late rounds, plays those DTs, and wins, puts up FCs on DT2 and on DT3, and they win both of them. Or, no, excuse me, he FCs both. They win one of the two, and then he, but he did his job. USA winning DT1 was kind of surprising, DT4 less so, but I think that's going to be less favored in Grand Finals, so I think, that's kind of the question mark is, will White Cat be able to keep up the performance he had yesterday? And I think the answer is probably yes, because he's the highest skill cap player, or tied highest skill cap player maybe left in the tournament. I think White Cat, Fancy Lad, Flying Tuna from South Korea are probably, and then Utami, probably the best players still left, and that's why they're 4 out of the top 5 performers in this round. But I think it was really interesting to see, kind of the cat and mouse game that those teams played yesterday, where they leaned into their skill sets, they won their early picks on their skill sets, but then the USA got a break point and gave up a break point, got another break point, gave up another break point in the same fashion, where they won the DT1, then lost a hidden, then they won the DT2 and lost another hidden. It's a very strange way for that match to have played out towards the end, and I think the USA needs to figure out whether or not they actually want to pick into that hidden pool again, and I think Germany, probably bans the low AR hidden again, might ban, a Nomad 6 this time around, instead of a free mod like they did, because free mod pool went with the free mod 3 went unplayed, free mod 1 got banned, free mod 2 was the one that did get picked, and the USA kind of underperformed on it, even though it was Germany's pick. So they'll have some thinking to do. The USA showed who they were. We know to expect them to be a great team, and they performed well. But it was a razor thin margin that they won that match by, and they're not going to be comfortable with that by any means. The grand finals pool is really hard, and it's going to be a lot about who can perform best and who scales the most into that late stage. For the other matches, the two teams that got eliminated this week, right? Canada beating United Kingdom, or four teams that got eliminated this week, I guess. So, three. Yeah, I can't do math. It's okay. Canada beating UK, so UK gets eliminated in kind of surprising fashion. I think they really didn't play all that well this match, and sometimes that just happens, unfortunately. But you got the best out of Canada in this one, that 7-4 win. They got some great performances, and it felt like UK just wasn't quite there. They had a couple of really good performances. Malteser looked very good. Bubbleman looked like Bubbleman, but not quite at the tier we've seen from him in the past. And the rest of their team was a little hit or miss. Carthy had his moments and had his not so great moments. Same with Majora, Kingling, etc., etc. I think if I'm that team, I'm not satisfied, because they could have done better, and they didn't. Unfortunately, they had a couple of these moments with like Bubbleman on DT1, Bubbleman here, this top score on Hard Rock 3, Bubbleman here. It's the Bubbleman show. This sort of trend with the UK, they need to fix that. They need to fix that really badly. Scores like this on Hidden 2, where Bowman FCs and nobody else on his team is within 500,000 points of him. They can't have that happen. You can't win in these late stages like that, and that's what happened there. So I think UK will figure things out, is capable of figuring things out going into next year. They've got a lot of time between now and then for players to develop, to figure out what they want to do with their roster. Obviously some failings of that team and missing a player. Of course, they did not have Voss, so you're playing 7v8 in a final stage, not something you want to be doing. The other team that lost on Saturday, of course, Hong Kong, just overmatched. They I don't like to put it this way, but they benefited from having a bracket that really was comfortable for them. They run into an easy Turkey opponent in the round of 32. They ran into Indonesia, who was overseeded, overhyped in round of 16. Then they run into Russia and take them out in a tiebreaker in quarterfinals. And then you see what happens when they hit that late stage. They have 4 players who they can rely on. And those 4 players can't do it all against teams like the United States and teams like South Korea. And so they just drop 2 straight matches and are eliminated just like that. I think Hong Kong can take a lot out of this. I don't think people expected them to get top 6. I know I didn't. Like I said, they basically had a 4-man roster, right? They were down to, A21, Shirai Yuki, MCY4, and one other player. Hang on, I have to check who the name is that I'm thinking of. Jagbet 3. That's basically what they were down to, and it's hard to do much with that. But I think other players, will look at this result and say, hey, we got top 6. That's really good with the team that we had. Let's do better next year. So I think Hong Kong will be back, and I think, we might see them putting together a roster again that can get to that semifinals, get to that top 6 stage. I think they're definitely capable of that. It's just going to depend on what their kind of player development looks like over the next year. It's going to depend on, how much these guys continue to play tournaments, whether they can get some of those fill players who probably should have been on the team but didn't play, like Hello Tom, not having him on this roster. Muji, Tira, RLSC, Minecraft 570 just unfortunately kind of aren't cutting it. And unless they develop a lot over the next year, I don't know if they'll be able to cut it next year either. But we'll see. A lot of time between now and then. A lot of opportunities to improve, to get better, and to put together a roster that's even stronger than this year. And then, of course, South Korea. Man, South Korea. I will be the first to admit that I never know what to make of South Korea teams. I said before the tournament started, this is one of those countries that you'll look at their roster and they put somebody in who is unheard of, right? You might see somebody on their team who you've never heard of before, and they just drag them up to top 6, top 8 regardless, because their core is so strong and they're capable of performing so well when it matters. This team with Karuna, with Tuna, with Karcher, who also on that Rookie of the Year list. And then, they fill in other players. Those three are the big three. But Doomsday Fanboy came in and really outperformed expectations, especially in that Losers Round 7 match against Team Canada. That was a big part of their win there. He came in and put out some really good performances. And, Maya's coming in for that kind of weird stuff that he's known for. Nope KJK similarly kind of in for certain picks, not a lot. Rankaj not playing much, not playing super well when he is. I don't know that he played at all this week. Zayson played a couple maps, bottom scored many of them. So, they're kind of rolling with a little bit of a 5 or 6 man roster here. I think against Germany in that losers final, you're going to see Karuna, you're going to see Tuna, you're going to see Karcher. And then it's going to be kind of a revolving door for their fourth. It's going to be, Zayson for speed finger control stuff, Doomsday Fanboy for maybe some stamina stuff. Nope KJK for hidden, Mayaz for weird. They're gonna be I think a 3-man core that kind of gets filled out, and it's going to depend very much on those carries and how well they perform as to whether or not they have a chance against Germany. But very, very impressed by this South Korea roster. They came in and they dropped down to losers bracket in the round of 16. They lost in that tiebreaker to the UK. And then they just rolled through 6-0 over Norway, 6-3 in the rematch against Brazil from last year, 6-2 against Japan, 6-2 against Romania, and then, of course, 7-2 over Hong Kong, 7-5 over Canada. Canada, to touch on them before we move on to grand finals, amazing, right? Top 3 last year, top 4 this year, with all the player changes that they went through. They brought in a new captain, Xyla. They brought in Curtis, who was 5-digit not that long ago. They brought in Vesprit. They brought in Yip, aka Jeremy. They brought in Muffin Slayer. Like, these are a lot of new names, and there are a lot of big names that they're replacing. They had to figure out how to replace Azer. They had to figure out how to replace Ryuke at the 11th hour. They had to replace Stoof and Trev. I mean, this is not a team that looks anything like what they made that run last year all the way to the winners final with, and they showed up. They got the number 2 seed in qualifiers. They got through to the winners semifinals, ran into Germany, not a shameful loss there. And they beat UK in a match that I thought UK was at the point where they're going to just outscale Canada, and that proved to be completely wrong. And then they had a close match against South Korea. I mean, I think I predicted that I think I had initially predicted that at a tiebreaker. Didn't think they would end up happening. Didn't think they would end up getting 5 points even, and they did. They do a great job of prepping. They do a good job of playing to their strengths. Zudinator has come a ridiculously long way. Xylice has come a ridiculously long way. Nick1324 played damn near every map, and he got some flack, I think, for a bunch of 1 misses or big combos that he then missed later on in. But the guy showed up when it mattered. Their team did a great job. I think they have one of the best team atmospheres. I think Azer talked about that in the preview show for OWC, that the Canadian team atmosphere is so great, and that was a huge part, I think, of their run, because they just never get down. They can lose some points, they can lose a pick, they can drop a break point, whatever, and they figure out ways to keep things going on. And I think that's really remarkable and admirable, and I think it'll serve them well in going forward, into future years. They drop out at 4th place, and I don't think people expected them to get that far necessarily with what we saw going in, but getting the number 2 seed and dropping out in the finals week, top 4 to a very strong South Korea squad. Again, nothing to be ashamed of there either. So, sayonara to Canada, UK, Hong Kong this week. Of course, only 3 teams can make it through into grand finals. Germany versus South Korea. United States awaiting the winner anxiously with bated breath. I think Germany is just too strong based on what we saw yesterday against the United States. I don't know that South Korea quite has the depth to match what Germany showed. Like I was saying, they only really, it's a 3-man main core and then, kind of fill, but they're going to have maybe 6 players who are really competitive at this stage based on how things have been going recently, 7 at the best. I just don't think Rankaj is a meaningful member of that team anymore this late in the tournament. Meanwhile, Germany, they had good performances from basically everyone. And I think, for Flying Tuna to match Whitecat and for them to have somebody who can match whatever the second best German player is, whether it's Dust Ice on a map, whether it's Kriller on a map, whether it's Okinamo on a map, so on. There's so many players on that team who can just pop off depending on the type of pick. I think it's going to be a tough ask for South Korea. I think they can keep it close. I've seen people saying, "Oh, 7-2, 7-3 Germany. It's not going to even be close." I think it's something a little closer to maybe 7-4, 7-5. But I do think Germany goes on to win that one. I just don't think South Korea has the depth that they'll need. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what we get for picks and bans, because obviously South Korea, a team that has looked good on some of the mechanic stuff similarly to Germany. So, again, a little bit of a mind game as to what they'll be banning and what they'll be picking in that one. But I think at the end of the day, Germany is just going to be the stronger team, and I think that's the one that they're gonna come out of that losers final. South Korea will, I think, end up in third place, which is a great result. Getting back up into grand finals week for the first time in a couple of years. Really good for South Korea. Really great to see out of Flying Tuna as well. Of course, his military service begins the Monday after grand finals, so maybe something crazy happens and he gets to that grand final. It'd be amazing to see him win an OWC the day before he goes away, but I think Germany is just too strong there. And then that leaves us United States versus Germany, and I think it comes down to the tiniest of margins. Again, much like it did yesterday, it is how well can the United States improve on some of those picks that they lost yesterday. The break points that they dropped on the hiddens, they can't let that happen again. For Germany, it is, can they continue to rely on their mechanics? Can Whitecat continue to play at the level that he did in that final? Because United States seems to always have an answer. They don't have Vaxa anymore, but they have Utami, they've got Fancy Lad, they've got Taquito, they've got Erison on his maps, Exarch on his maps, Ariu on his maps, so on. And, there's always somebody who can come in for the United States. And, the way things went yesterday, it kind of felt like Whitecat was really putting that team on his back for Germany. And he was a large part of the reason why they were able to keep it close, why they were able to take it all the way to that tiebreaker. And if he doesn't do that, I think that match is a little more like a 7-4, 7-5. But, on the other hand, if the United States doesn't get a slightly more advantageous double time 1, double time 2 map in the pool, then, maybe Germany doesn't give up those break points and they win it 7-4, 7-5. It can really just flip-flop either way based on the tiniest little things. I think Germany has the mechanics advantage. I do, especially with the pool going, trending a little bit more back into a more difficult stamina requirement on some of those DTs. I think it's going to force the United States to adjust their ban strategy. They got to ban 2 Nomads. They went Nomad 2, Nomad 5, and then one of the DT, one of the 2 of DT2 and DT3 that meant they left up. And I think it's going to be a tougher ask this week. I think United States maybe thinks about banning out Nomad 5, leaving Nomad 2 up, and taking the chance, because they have good stream players, maybe not to the caliber of Germany, who are arguably the best stream roster in this tournament this year, but they can play it pretty well. And I don't know that they're going to want to run the risk of another million+ point loss on a DT, because that's the sort of thing that Germany is capable of. I talked about that during the cast yesterday. If you give them a DT2, DT3, they're going to put up 4 million a lot of times. And that's still, getting near that point is going to still be possible even on a grand finals pool with how good that roster is. Guys like Dust Ice, KHZ, Okinamo on speed, just really, really powerful. So it's going to come down to the tiniest little things, performances on the day, and that's going to be what determines the winner this year. I do think that United States is not infallible, but I think they have a lot of confidence winning the match yesterday, even with, some of the unfortunate things that happened during that match, the losing the hiddens and Fancy Lad DCing during the TB. I don't think that they'll let that happen again. I think they'll be better prepared for those hidden maps, and I think in the early goings in the match, they might be a little closer on some of Germany's early picks than they were yesterday. And for that reason, I think it may well go to a bracket reset this year. I think I could see that happening, but with a kind of tech-ish tiebreaker, if it goes back to a tiebreaker again, I think the United States is comfortably in the advantage, and I do think they come out the winners. But if Germany continues to play the way they did yesterday, they get those performances out of some of those players, I think that they can absolutely take it, and dethrone the U.S. from what would be a 4th straight OWC championship. Obviously, first time that would have happened in standard. And then lastly, I have been thinking, it's that kind of time of year where you get most of the way through the season in the real world sports, and we start talking about awards. In college, you're talking about some of the Heisman favorites. You've got C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. You've got Bryce Young from Alabama. You had until Saturday Kenneth Walker from Michigan State. The NFL, you're talking about, is it maybe Jonathan Taylor? For Rookie of the Year, you've got guys like Jamar Chase, Defensive Player of the Year, Trayvon Diggs, so on like that. And I think that's something that I would like to start to explore more in OSU. I think, MVP this year is very interesting to look at. Rookie of the Year is something that's very interesting to look at. We've got some new players coming in this year who've been playing amazingly. You've got Most Improved Player, because my goodness, some of the players that have just been on the come up this year it's pretty remarkable to see. I think for MVP, you're looking at guys like Fancy Ladutami, White Cat, Flying Tuna. Those are, I think, probably the four that would come to mind for me. And it'll just depend on what happens in grand finals. Rookie of the Year, Kriller on Germany. You've got Doomsday Fanboy on South Korea. You've got Xylice on Canada. Rookie captain taking them to top 4. Really, really incredible to see that happen. Most Improved Player, man, Karcher. Did you know he played in 2020? Because until I looked, I didn't know he played in 2020. Crazy. But dude has been just showing out this year. He's probably the front runner if I were to have that award, but I think Zudinator might be up there as well. I think, despite already being at the top of the game, White Cat didn't play to his best last year, so he is absolutely, someone who has put forth an MVP caliber performance after really not doing so last year. But I would really like to see some discussion into those things, and I'd like to see if we can explore that in an official context, because I think those are some very cool categories that really don't get talked about nearly enough. I think they could be fun discussions. You got to kind of figure out, who do we consider? Do we go more objective, more subjective? Do we look at eye tests? Do we look at statistics? Do we consider teams that were in quarterfinals, semifinals? Where's the cutoff? Since it's a little different in a tournament instead of like a league where you've got, 17 weeks or, 12 weeks or whatever, 162 games, 82 games of data to pull from and to look at. A little more difficult in OSU where, half the teams are eliminated every round after starting in the second week. So, that becomes a little trickier. But I think if we can kind of sort that out, I think it would be very cool to talk about. And, it's kind of, a little awards show, a little post-tournament, these guys were who we were impressed with, and this is why. So that's something that I think would be cool to see a discussion on. I think it's something I'm going to push for. But man, grand finals next weekend. We had a great finals weekend, a tiebreaker in the winners final, 7-5, very closely fought losers round 7. I think the losers final is going to be close. I think the grand final is going to be electric. Definitely don't want to miss any of those. So until Saturday, Germany versus South Korea, Saturday the 27th. Winner of that to face the United States on Sunday in UTC. But until then, I think there's been a lot to take away, and I think a lot of teams are playing great, and I just give all the props in the world to them.